All right, so here's your homework for ellipses. It's a little bit shorter than the lesson that you just did yesterday or whatever. Can you graph each ellipse that you see, the equation? Now notice these are in standard form on the side, so it should be not too bad. So the center comes from the numerator, so that's -4 and -1. I'm going to put that on my graph, -4, -1. Next, the major vertices. That's going to be horizontal. So if I look here, the square root of 25, the square root of 9, that's going to give me my axes and my vertices. So I'm going to add and subtract 5. So if I add 5, that's +1. If I subtract 5, that's -9. So those I'm going to put on here. So -4, or sorry, 1 and -1, and -9 and -1. So those are my major vertices. Find the minor vertices or the co-vertices. What I'm going to do is just add and subtract 3. So if I add 3, or if I subtract 3, I get -4, 2, and I get -4, -4. So I'll do that. And I'm just counting 3 up and 3 down from the center. And then make your ellipse. The foci we find by subtract the square root of, and we subtract these. So 25 take away 9, which is 16. So the foci is 4 along the major. So from the center, if I add 4, that's 0. If I subtract 4, that's -8. Those are my foci, just -1. So 0, -1, and -8, -1. So 0, -1, I'll put a little x there. At -8, -1, I'll put a little x there along the major axes. And I have drawn my ellipse and found all the things I need. All right, number 2. Look at the numerator. The center is at 5 and 3. So I'll find that, 5 to the right, and 3 up. The A is the square root of 49, and B is the square root of 4, which is 2. This is going to be a vertical ellipse. So that means I'm going to add and subtract 7 to the y value. So that's 10 when I add, and subtract 7, that's -4. So 5 and 10, and 5 and -4. Next, the minor axes. So when I find the minor axes, I'm going to add and subtract 2 to the y to the x value. So that's going to be 7, and subtract 2. That's going to be 3. So find 7, 3. But I'm really on this is going to count 2 to the right and 2 to the left. And then you've drawn your vertical ellipse. Connect the ends together. The foci, well, that's always along the major axes. That's the longer one, the y coordinate. So we're going to have 5. Now, to find what that value is, you add or subtract, you do the square root of, and you subtract the denominators. So 49 take away 4 is the square root of 45. And the square root of 45 is not quite 7. So like 6.7, 6.8, 6 half-ish. We're going to estimate it. So for here, we'll give the exact answer, which is the square root of 45. We're going to go 3 plus or minus the square root of 45. That's the exact one. When I go to my graph, I'm going to count like 6 and almost 7. And put an x there, 6 and almost 7. And then put it down there, and you have the foci that go with it. Number 3. The center is at 0 and 3. The square root of 16 is b. The square root of 30 is actually a because it's bigger. And I'm going to approximate that at about 5.5 or so. So my major vertices, the exact answer, is along the y coordinate. So 0 stays the same, but to 3, I'm going to add and subtract root 30. So let me find 0, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like a half, and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like a half, and I have the ends of my vertices, major vertices. My co-vertices are going to add and subtract 4. That's 4 and 3 and negative 4 and 3, so I don't have to estimate those. So from here, 4 to the right and 4 to the left. Connect and make your ellipse. The foci, the denominators I'm going to subtract. So 30 take away 16. So the square root of 14 is what I'm going to use. And the square root of 14 is really close to the square root of 16. So it's like 3.8, almost 4. So if it was 16, the square root of 16 would be 4, so it's not quite 4. So here, along my major, so vertical, I'm going to count like 3, almost 4. So 1, 2, 3, almost 4, put an X there. Count down, 1, 2, 3, almost 4, put an X there. And you have your 2. I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I got it. So there's your foci. How do I write it exactly? It's the y coordinate. So the center I write down, so it's 0, 3, and I add and subtract root 14 for the exact answer for the foci. All right, number 4. Can you graph this ellipse? The center, negative 2, positive 2. A is the square root of 44. This is going to be horizontal, and I got to estimate what that is. So it's between 6 and 7, somewhere. Estimate it. So from here, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and not quite 7. From here, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost, but not 7. To write it down properly, it's the x. So to the x coordinate, I add and subtract root 44. Next, my b is the square root of 18, which again is in between 4 and 5. So maybe like a little closer to 4. So but I got to count 4 in a little bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a little bit. So I have the endpoints of my ellipse that I'm sketching. So that's what it looks like. The foci is going to be the square root, and I'm going to subtract the denominators. So 44 take away 18, that's 26. And so that answer is like really close to 5, like just a bump more than 5. So to the major, I'm going to count 5 and put an X there, and along the major axes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. So you have your 2 foci along there. To write it down exactly, in fact, I need to write this down exactly. To the y value, I went root 18, added and subtracted. To the foci, again, it's the x value, and I'm adding and subtracting root 26. All right, turn the page. All right, can you write this in standard form? Let's practice that again, what we did. So step 1, the x's go together. Step 2, we're going to see if we need a factor, which we do for the y. For the x, we don't. So to complete the square, divide by 2 and square it. So that's 8, and square is 64. For the y, I have to factor first. So 4 goes into 16 4 times. Now that number you divide by 2 and square. Now what are the numbers we're going to add to the other side? So we're going to add 64. And then 4 times 4, we're going to add 16. So we're going to factor. So this is x plus 8 squared. we have a 4 in front, and then factor y minus 2 squared, and then to the right side it combines to 64, and then divide. So we're going to divide everything by 64, and our end answer is x plus 8 squared over 64. 4 goes into 64 16 times, and then 64 divided by 64, that's 1. All right, number 6, again. First, the x's. So to bring the x's together, we're going to add 56x. To bring the y's together, we're going to subtract 4y. And then I'm going to subtract 56. I'm going to factor out a 4. 4 goes into 56 19 times. No, 14 times. Thankfully, it's an even number. And then divide by 2 and square, so that's where 49 comes from. For the y, no factoring. Just divide by 2 and square. And then what's the number I add to the other side? So 4 times 49, that's 196. I'll help you with that. And then 4 also gets added to the other side. So I'm going to factor. To complete the square, I'm going to combine like terms. Again, I'll help you through this so that you can combine it fine. It's 144. Divide everything by 144. Now 4 goes into 144 evenly. 36. And then just write the rest down. Number 7. Here we go. We have 14x squared so combine those together. Factor out the 14. Next, complete the square. Notice for y, we don't need to complete the square. No linear term. So 14 times 1, we need to add 14 to the other side. So if I add that up, that's 196. So we're going to factor. And divide. So 14 into 196, that's 14. Times 14 is 196. 49 into 196, that's actually 4. And that's equal to 1. The more we practice, the better and stronger you get at this algebra. X's, 6x squared, subtract 60x, 9y squared plus 54y. We're leaving negative 87 on the other side. Factor out the 6, and you're left with 10. Divide by 2 and square, that's 25. Factor out the 9, that's 6. Divide by 2 and square, that's 9. Be careful. What number am I adding to the other side? So 6 times 25, that's 150. 9 times 9, that's 81. So combine the terms here. So first of all, this I'm just going to factor. That's x subtract 5. This is y plus 3. Now on the right side, negative 87, 150, 81, that's 144. Divide everything by 144. Now 6 goes into it evenly. 25 24 times. 9 goes into it evenly 16 times. And of course, it's equal to 1. 2 more. We're not doing the last 3 questions. X's. So 9 and 10. Here we go. Step 1. Bring the X's together with me. Bring the Y's together with me. Next step, factor. So factor out a 12. Divide by 2 and square it. Factor out a 3. That's 12. Divide by 2 and square it. That's 36. And then what numbers get added to negative 48? So 12 times 4 is 48. 3 times 36 is 90 and 18, 108. So if I put this together, factor it. And then combine. So negative 48 and 48, 0. I'm just left with 108. Now the easy part, divide everything by 108 and simplify. So 12 divided by 108, that's 9. 3 divided by 108 is 36. And that's equal to 1. Last one. We're almost there. Number 10. Step 1. The x's need to be together. 4x squared, subtract 72x. 25y squared, subtract 250y. And that's going to be equal to negative 549 on the other side. Next, factor. So I'm going to factor out a 4. 4 goes into 72, 18. Divide by 2 and square it. That's 81. We're going to continue with 25. We're going to factor that out. 25 into 250, so $2.50. That's 10. 10. Divide by 2 and square it. That's 25. And then that's equal to negative 549. But what do we need to add to the other side? So 4 times 81, that's 325. And then 25 times 25, which is 625, to the other side. So let's clean this up. So that's x subtract 9 squared. That is y subtract 5 squared. And then on the other side, you can use a calculator, combine them together. Negative 549 plus 325 plus 625. Put it together, and you get 400. I think. I get 950. Take away 549. I get 401, which makes me think I'm going to make a little decision here, because if I divide by 401, it's going to get ugly, because it won't go in evenly, right? But if it was 400, it would go in evenly. So this number, for its work, should have really been negative 550. So I'm going to go back to the question. I didn't make up the question. I'm going to change it. When I look at the answer key, they assumed the answer was 550 here to give a nice clean answer on the right side. So I'm going to make it clean. So change that to 550. So this is 550, this is 550. So when you combine it together, it really is 400 if this is 550. Now divide. And now we're done. So 4 goes into 400 100 times. 25 goes into there 16, and it's equal to 1. for those that are curious, what would happen if it didn't go in evenly? You'd still write it, you'd just have a fraction within a fraction. So you'd have a complex fraction. So you would have written down here is that instead of 4 over 400, you would have written down the reciprocal in the denominator so that you could see it would be 400 divided by, so in essence, if it didn't go in evenly, you'd have a fraction. And look at the denominator. How did I get 100? I want 400 divided by 4. So you would write it as a fraction, and you would do the reciprocal. So it would have been like, what number would we get? 401. So we would have written down 401 divided by 4. That's what would have given me my major axes and so on. But pretty ugly, right, to work with. So it's nice to have a nice clean number like 400. Divide, they go in evenly, and you have this algebra skill to factor, combine like terms, to complete the square, to be able to take an equation and write it in standard form. I am so proud of you that you're doing your work. Mr. G Math, over and out, and until next time.